sometime soon, this man could walk into your life and make you a millionaire.
The last time we were together so long ago, we discussed one of the most successful fast food advertising campaigns of the 1980s. Today we're looking at its exact opposite. So let's get right down to it.
The bigger the burger, the better the burger. The burger's a bigger at Burger King.
Burger King started off as Insta-Burger King, founded in 1953 in Jacksonville, Florida by Keith Kramer and Matthew Burns. Two franchisees, James McLemore and David Egerton, bought the company the following year, dropping the Insta from the name. Burger King rapidly evolved into the restaurant we know today. The flame broiler would be introduced in 1956, with the 4-ounce Whopper following in 1957. Both of these innovations would serve a significant role in Burger King's branding for decades to come. Fast food fans may forever argue about which chain boasts the superior burger, but no one debates who had the most effective advertising.
2 all-beef patties, special sauce.
2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
McDonald's advertising hit on all the fronts. Catchy jingles, memorable slogans, even a clown that managed not to be creepy. Well, eventually.
I'll give you 3 more hamburgers.
Also, we seem to be a lot more tolerant of clowns back then.
Follow Ronald McDonald through the land of apple pie trees.
Ronald McDonald started an entire line of McDonaldland commercials, often alongside a colorful assortment of his fast food obsessed companions. They even elected a talking cheeseburger as mayor. They're quirky like that. Even without the aid of a dim-witted purple blob, Burger King's own assortment of characters managed to be somehow creepier. You had the king himself, who, like Ronald, was a magician for some reason. The Duke of Doubt has a face that's more frightening than charming, and the Burger Thing, yikes. The highly recognizable Ronald McDonald remained the iconic fast food spokesclown for decades. Meanwhile, the slow fall of the Burger King kingdom throughout the 80s went mostly unnoticed.
We can serve your grilled beef Whopper, fresh with everything on topper. Any way you think is proper, have it your way.
That's not to say Burger King had ineffective advertising. Their Have It Your Way campaign, as I've mentioned before, was memorable and highly quotable. Burger King also had the fortune of snagging the coveted Star Wars license for various promotional tie-ins offered for sale at their restaurant. Then, in 1982, viewers took notice of Burger King's bold, unprecedented strategy of calling out their main rival by name in a television advertisement.
Unbelievable.
But despite their best efforts, they still lagged in sales behind McDonald's. And soon their position at number 2 was further threatened by third-place Wendy's, especially with the sudden popularity of a certain impatient octogenarian.
Where's the beef?
In an attempt to push a few more Whoppers, they put their longtime advertising partners, J. Walter Thompson, to work on creating an elaborate series of commercials that would hopefully turn things around.
At this time, Burger King begins a nationwide search for one man. His name is Herb.
Towards the end of 1985, Burger King kicked off their ambitious ad campaign with cryptic teasers about a mysterious loner named Herb. What was Herb's crime? He never ate a Whopper. The nerve. For this supposed dietary misconduct, he earned scorn and disappointment from friends and family alike. Burger King played up their indignation against Herb's burger apathy by offering everyone else the Whopper for 99 cents. There was a catch, however.
I'm not Herb. I'm not Herb.
Customers had to publicly certify they were not Herb, or at least not that Herb. Because if there's anything customers love doing, it's having to recite ad copy back at disinterested cashiers just to get a meager discount on fast food.
Burger King presents a musical message to Herb.
Come on now, Herbert, don't be shy. You're gonna love plain broiling when you give it a try.
While Herb was a burger fugitive, forever on the run from the Whopper cops, his actual appearance was kept a mystery. It was quite obvious Burger King was building up to a gigantic reveal. That reveal came in January of 1986.
After 2 weeks of inundation, a storm, a flood of promotion and publicity, the curtain is about to pull, and Super Bowl 20 will play to this enthusiastic audience in New Orleans.
Super Bowl 20 was memorable for a few reasons, and not just because of that novelty charity single released 2 months prior.
We're not here to start no trouble. We're just here to do the Super Bowl show.
This was the 20th anniversary of the big game, making the already widely celebrated event extra special. The New England Patriots, who just barely made it to the game after a mediocre season, quickly put points on the board. But the heavily favored Chicago Bears answered with swift vengeance, setting several Super Bowl records at their opponent's expense. And if that wasn't exciting enough, Herb finally showed his face.
Herb, is it true you finally tasted a Whopper? Yes, it was very good.
Now free from the shadows, Herb, played by veteran stage actor John Menick, proudly announced he finally tried a Whopper. Of course he loved it. So much so, he was embarking on a cross-country Burger King tour.
This man is Herb. Now that Herb loves the Whopper, he's visiting a Burger King in every state.
If a customer spotted Herb in a Burger King, they won $5,000. And everyone present was entered into a $1 million grand prize drawing. Herb's tour lasted from January to March of 1986. In that time, I could only imagine the indignities suffered by anyone who happened to look even remotely like Herb. Burger King would have been strictly off limits lest they suffer a barrage of Herb accusations. Although I'm sure those with absolutely no resemblance are harassed anyway, by those who think that everything in life is a trick question. Burger King would find itself on the receiving end of duplicity accusations for failing to award prize money to 15-year-old Alabama resident Jason Hallman, after he was the first to spot Herb at his location. Instead, the prize was given to his 17-year-old friend, David Brown. This was because of a contest rule stating winners needed to be at least 16 years of age. Jason's parents brought the issue to the state senator, who agreed that the age requirement was not well publicized. Alabama State Senate would eventually pass a resolution labeling Burger King's actions as consumer fraud. This public relations issue would have been a minor hiccup were the promotion producing desired results, which they were not. Attempts to make Herb a more prominent pop culture figure, such as his stint as guest timekeeper at WrestleMania 2, came and went with little fanfare. By May of 1986, Burger King bid Herb farewell. A campaign that cost $40 million and scheduled to run at least a year lasted barely 5 months with little to show for the expense. By all accounts, it was a certified flop. In the aftermath, Burger King parted ways with the agency of J. Walter Thompson.
This is a Burger King town. It's made just for me.
Subsequent ad campaigns played it very safe, favoring milk toast slices of Americana. Uncontroversial and forgettable, serving the bare minimum requirements of reminding consumers that Burger King still existed, and nothing more. Hindsight, they say, is 20/20, and as such, it's quite easy to see the problems that weren't evident while it was happening. First, the build-up around Herb's identity led to a revelation that was about as exciting as socks on Christmas morning. No offense to Mr. Minnick, but there was absolutely nothing fascinating, interesting, or funny about the character of Herb. Secondly, Burger King couldn't decide whether Herb was the good guy or the bad guy. At first, he was the antagonist of their narrative, a weirdo who wouldn't eat a Whopper. It made sense, oddly. But one Whopper later, and he's the new messiah, jutting around the country, handing out cash to patrons on Burger King's dime. One would think someone who earnestly enjoyed Burger King's food without a multi-million-dollar public shaming would be more deserving of that privilege. That brings me to the third problem. Elevating the clumsy and unflatteringly dressed Herb to the role of de facto mascot for the chain sent a clear message. Burger King is for nerds. Nerd! You have to remember that it's not like today where people are proudly calling themselves nerds while being portrayed as lovable and quirky in shows like The IT Crowd and The Big Bang Theory. In the image-obsessed 80s, being labeled a nerd was an insult, and the nerd stereotype, more often than not, was a shorthand way of depicting a social outcast. Serving as either comic relief or bully victim, but not quite someone who could sell burgers. Burger King's decision to invest no small amount of time and money into Herb helped to exacerbate the internal strife between Pillsbury, Burger King's parent company at the time, and their franchisees. There had already been plenty of accusations of management inconsistencies and general incompetence with the Burger King brand at the hands of Pillsbury. This low morale was not doing Burger King's bottom line any favors. On top of all the other internal strife, the franchisees had a good point about Herb. He was a terrible spokesperson for the brand. Think about it. He never ever was seen eating or even holding anything that Burger King sells. Over the years, the whole Herb fiasco has been built up as this devastating marketing disaster of immeasurable proportions. And yeah, I'm guilty of that myself. But while it wasn't Burger King's finest hour, after all was said and done, the chain was financially strong enough to recover from that embarrassing stumble. While they've never been able to surpass McDonald's in sales, they're doing just fine. Still ranking top 10 among all fast food establishments as of the date of the filming of this episode. But what about Herb himself, John Menick? Whatever became of him? Herb was never given the same adulations Clara Peller received, but his actor, John Menick, was able to walk away from that infamous role relatively unscathed.
Oh, you're leaving now? I thought maybe you could just kind of hang around and we could talk.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
Over the next 15 years, John had steady work as a character actor in several commercial, television, and film productions. There's a good chance if you were watching primetime TV in the 80s or 90s, you've seen him. He semi-retired from acting in 2001. In 2011, he started Screen Artists Co-op and Talent in Asheville, North Carolina to help support and develop other aspiring actors. And while John certainly had a long, successful career doing what he loves, there is still a question that remains. Did Herb ever eat a second Whopper? The answer to that, we may never know.
Come on now, Herbert, don't be shy. You're gonna love plain broiling when you give it a try. It ain't number one, it's what's happening. Cause what plain broiling does is lock the flavor in. So wherever you hide.
There's a word for someone who doesn't do what's good for them.
The word is Herb, Mother.